Welcome back, fam. This is the 1-2 Punch. My name is Maddie Levine, and we have a huge fight night coming our way on Saturday night. And we got a lot of New Englanders on the card, which means one of the best striking coaches in the game is going to be in the corner for people like Joe Lauzon, for Calvin Kattar. He's behind so many other fighters as well. So we're going to pick his brain and see how Fight Week is treating my good friend, Jake Manini. Hello, Jake.
Hi, Maddie. That was quite the intro. You nailed that stuff.
You know,
Jeez,
I try. But how's so you're in Austin, right? How's it treating you?
Austin, Texas. It is so hot out here. It's almost unlivable. This is nuts.
No.
No, I'm being a wimp. It's like the worst day in a Boston summer all the time. To be fair,
sucks.
I think it's this is unnatural. I mean, a lot of my friends live in Austin are like, enjoy the heat wave. We're not there right now for good reason. It's usually not like this. So I'll give it a fair shake, but it is hot.
So you're just chilling in the hotel?
Oh, yeah. I don't go out. I'll wake up at 7, and I'm back in the house or hotel by 11. I don't emerge until 4 p.m. Those hot hours, I'm in my bed or I'm relaxing. No way I'm going out and that stuff.
Well, I mean, you're there for really cool reasons. You're there for UFC Fight Night. But you have done so much for the fight game, especially New England fighters. I'd love to hear how you got started, because it's certainly not MMA the way that you got started. Muay Thai is your jam. So how did you get exposed to the whole Muay Thai world?
So when I was 16, I was doing karate. I was doing Wei-Jiu karate in Hanover, Mass. And I lucked out. It was the first spot I went to. It was a friend from school. It was her father, and her father was a sheriff, and he was a particularly gnarly dude. He was really, really great, but he had a reputation for being a little on the rougher side. And he was actually the second highest ranked black belt in the country in Wei-Jiu. And it just happened I was friends with his daughter. So I went, and I really enjoyed it, and he preferred the harder, more competitive style of karate. Meanwhile, we did all the katas and stuff, and that was good, but we wanted something a little more. And I say I started with a couple friends. We wanted something a little more intense. So we wanted a little more options for our competition too, because karate competitions are not very big in America, especially where I was. Point fighting, yes, as you know, with Ross, but not that like full contact style.
Yeah.
So honestly, playing video games growing up, we always gravitated towards this one Street Fighter character, and his name was Sagat. Turns out that's actually a real person. They modeled him after a guy named Sagat, Pet who was a big golden era fighter. So my friend Mike and I, we Googled, we were 18, I'm 37. This was 9 years ago. No, I'm sorry, 19 years ago. Googled Muay Thai, and a gym came up just north of the city. I didn't have my license yet. Mike did. And it was all the way in Revere. So Revere, from Whitman-Hanson to Revere, you got to go through the city. It's like an hour and 20 minutes. We scheduled our free intro where you come in, you sit, you watch, kind of see how things are going on. And we took that really rough drive, took another one of our friends, Pat, and we sat and we watched the class, and it was like nothing we've ever seen before. It was intense. Like the second you walk in, it's just like full steam ahead. We weren't able to make that drive, and it is what it is. But 3, 4, 5 months later, I ended up getting my license. And we checked back in with that gym. We're like, listen, we'll just trade off driving. We'll figure it out. Turns out that gym had closed, and they had moved the operation into Dorchester. So for those who don't know, that's the southern part of the city. So it's a lot closer for us. That whacked, I think, a half hour off the drive. So let's give it a go.
Yeah.
And I mean, 6, 7, 8 years, just 5, 6 days a week, we just dug in. I actually, and I've said this before, and I love talking about it, I quit after my first year. It was too hard.
Snap. What?
I quit. Yeah.
Oh my God, my mind is blown right now. Tell me more.
So I just wanted to be like a skate rat, and I started dating seriously and stuff. So I just got distracted, and I was kind of a wimp. My buddies Pat and Mike kept up with it, and they were my very close friends. Pat eventually would stop going, but Mike stuck with it. In about a year to the day of me no longer going, Mike got his first fight, and it was in Philadelphia. And out of Pat, Mike, and myself, I tended to get into trouble a little more, and I had, unfortunately, plenty of experience fist fighting in the street. I went and I watched Mike fight in Philly, and I was blown away at how cool sanctioned fighting, like preparing for a fight. big lights. The ring was
Right.
like 5 feet off the ground. It was this whole thing. And I'd been to boxing fights. I had seen MMA at that point, and it was just like nothing was like this. And it was in Philly, so everyone hated Boston. So they booed my team when they came out. And Mike was fighting a Philly cop, nonetheless.
Oh, geez.
Mike beat the brakes off of this kid. It was like I was like, this is it. I need to do this.
There was something kick in the butt.
Oh yeah, there's something about watching you be responsible for your own success. I mean, you know this as a fighter yourself, that there's so much team involved at the beginning, but once you get into that ring, you are solely responsible for your success. And I need to do that. And I remember sitting in the crowd and like feeling my soft belly. And I was just like, oh, I need to like go do something. I was just a like chubby, goofy little teenager. I had nothing to me.
Wow.
And I mean, after that, I had another funny little side story. I was like, hey, Mom, Dad, for my next birthday, for my 20th birthday, could you get me a membership to a local gym so I can lift and hit the treadmill and be in shape for Muay Thai? And I remember my mother looked at me. She's like, doesn't Muay Thai get you in shape? We're just going to get you the membership to the Muay Thai gym. I was like, I need to be in shape to be there because Mike was in such good shape. And I tell you what, they got me the membership. It was the best thing they ever did. And they paid for my first 6 months. And then I just worked my butt off to make sure I could make my dues. And I went nonstop. It like to the point where like my relationships and friendships suffered. I just sold out. I sold my soul.
Yeah, you drank the Kool-Aid.
100%.
So obviously you got into the ring a few times. But I honestly don't know much about your fighting career. Did you go into the professional ranks at all?
I did.
You did. Okay.
So, yep. So at that time, Muay Thai was illegal in Massachusetts, so we had to fight. Yeah, we had to fight on MMA cards. So the cards had to be advertised as MMA cards or just like general like combat sports card. So more often than not, we were fighting in a cage. We were fighting on some wonky rule sets. Sometimes there were shin pads. Sometimes there was headgear. Sometimes there was nothing.
Yeah.
There was never any elbows, though. The Massachusetts promoters are pretty good about that because the insurance and all that stuff.
Right.
So we were fighting there was this one big show in Worcester. We used to go to once Boston and the whole state of Massachusetts had cleared it up. That was like the big one. It was called ICE Fights, ICE, International Combat Experience or something. And that was my first time being in like a big ring in a big venue. We had like done smokers at local gyms and stuff. But that was it. And I mean, that was the biggest thing for me, because then it was, I need to fight everyone everywhere. Let's go see what it's like in Philly. I want to fight in the same ring Mike did. I want to fight in New York. I want to fight all this stuff. Yeah, so I had a very fun and exciting amateur career because there was really no professional. There was a big outlet for usually at that point people were moving to Thailand. So 2000, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys at a SEAL were moving to Thailand. So I fought amateur. I fought in 2 different weight classes. I never weighed the correct weight for the weight class. I was always either too small or too inexperienced. But Bill and Steve were like, listen, man, you want to fight, you have to fight everybody. You just have to fight who we get. And the relationships between the gyms back in the early 2000s were very much ego-driven. Nobody wanted to put together good fights. They just wanted their fighters to win. So more often than not, you were thrown to the wolves, or sometimes you were the wolf, and it was kind of sucked. I had 1 or 2 of those where I was the A side and I could feel it and I didn't like it. But I would say a majority of my fights in my amateur career were against some of the better people in the country. My last 5 amateur fights were the hardest fights. The professional fights don't even touch how hard those fights were. I was fighting, at that time being an amateur world champ was pretty big. That was a big deal. Guys like Tim Amorim, Mohammed Lemjardine. These are all names if you've been around the New York, New Jersey, Philly scene. They're dogs, and they all beat each other up, and they all had these like main event style fights on the undercard. And finally, I got to fight these guys, and a promoter by the name of Chris Tran had reached out to me. And Chris runs a gym, Weapons 9. He's one of the oldest promoters, oldest in terms of like busiest and been around. He's only in his 40s. And he was in with the WBC. He's a WBC representative. And he had messaged me and he was like, hey, I saved the message. I have it like in an old email. And he was like, you're beating all these guys, but no one's asking you to be on Team USA. No one's inviting you to the big shows. I would like to get you ranked in the WBC. And I was like, absolutely, sign me up. I didn't even know there was an amateur WBC ranking. So I would go on to beat 4, 3, lost to 2, beat 1, beat 2 again after that, lost the 1 again. Yeah, so I got a lot of good amateur exposure, and it's really cool when we go to the fights, and a lot of the old coaches from like the 2 generations go like, "Oh shit, you're still around!" Like, and we're all doing, "Oh man, look at you! You have a gut. You lost your hair."
We're all getting old. Oh no.
Yeah. I only had 3 professional fights. One of them was in Thailand. The one in Thailand wasn't professional rules. It was like mixed rules. The Thais did what they do.
Yeah.
They gave me a kid who was 25 pounds heavier than me and told me they didn't want elbows, but they wanted knees and all this stuff. I fought professional in New Jersey. We were the first, me and Jay Matias were the first full rules Muay Thai fight in the state of New Jersey. So we were whipping elbows at each other.
Oh, I'm sure.
No one got cut. I have no idea. It was just elbow after elbow after elbow. No one got cut. I don't know. We just couldn't throw elbows well enough yet. I fought in Rhode Island. Rhode Island, Thailand, in Jersey. So I had a very short professional career, but I had a lot of amateur fights and a lot of high-level amateur fights.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of that. But it was the experiences and learning and how I treat my fighters now, both Muay Thai and MMA. I wouldn't have been able to do that without that wild amateur experience.
Right. And now you've obviously switched gears. You're a coach now. You have plenty of students under you. Was that always the goal, to move into that coaching position, or did it kind of just happen naturally?
It just happened. So when we were coming up in the old school, so BMTA, Boston Muay Thai Academy, where Bill was the Jake in the equation. So there was Steve Soriano and there was Bill. Bill was one of Steve's longtime students, and he eventually took on a coaching role because the gym grew a little bit and Steve was busy. And then I became that for Bill. And part of growing up in the gym at like that 3-year mark, you start to take on assistant teaching duties. And then if you're doing well enough, you get your own class. And then if you're doing well with that, you start to get paid teaching the class. And a lot of it was to help survive the amount of work we were doing. The gym, like most gyms, was run by a bunch of part-timers. Everyone's got full-time careers and families and pensions and all that stuff. So they were, able to put in 5-6 hours most a week at the gym. So you kind of have this house being propped up by a lot of thin sticks. We didn't have like a full-time person. Bill, God love him, he used to just work nonstop and be at the gym nonstop. He had no kids at this point. So he was able to do it. And I mean, he would stretch himself thin.
Oh, I'm sure.
When I started Muay Thai, he was like less than a year out of his last fight. And he was like 30, 36, 37, I think. He'll correct me on this. So he was, Bill is in his 50s now, but he was like 200 pounds, 210 pounds. He was still sparring with us. He would hold pads and then he would put his gear on and spar with us. He was very active. So he wasn't just, holding pads and then having a snack in the back room while everyone was in class. He was like in it. He would go out Friday nights after we would train. He'd get banged up. He'd show up Sunday afternoon before everybody else, stinking like booze, hold pads, spar, coach. Like the man just if I get a lot of static from him sometimes about how hard I push myself, and it's his own fault. It's his own fault. I'm just doing what he did, and just in a little different way, a lot less booze. But that to me, and that's the roadmap. And even going back to my karate experience, that was Sensei Bob. He worked as a full-time sheriff. He'd have a gun pulled on him at 3 p.m. and be coaching at 7 p.m. Like that's just how we did things. So all of the role models in my life in terms of combat sports and even outside of combat sports, it's just work until your back breaks. It is what it is. The work works. So eventually I started coaching 1 or 2 classes, and then I got into holding pads a little more for the fighters. And then the first MMA fighter I ever worked with was Jamie Campbell, who is about to fight again after an 8-year layoff at the age of 42. June 17th or 18th. I want to say he fights Friday. We fight on Saturday. Yeah, he's about to fight for Joe Cass promotion in Wilmington. So Jamie was the first one that I worked with, and I had no idea what I was doing. I was barely cultivating first-time amateur fighters, and I have this 4-0 professional MMA fighter with 3 knockouts who's just like this stud of New England, and all I'm doing on pads is having him throw a combination and then yelling sprawl. And it's just like, this is it.
I think this is right.
It was just like, but I mean, that's what it was back then.
Yeah.
There wasn't much exposure in terms of the internet and DVDs and stuff. You had to really look for that. But,
Yeah.
Jamie had at that point retired after winning that last fight, but he's having another crack at it. I couldn't tell you why. I love him. He's going to do what he's going to do. It is what it is. Best of luck, Jamie.
I love that. I
But
love
that was it. And then we started to roll into it. And Jesus, next thing you know, we're here. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I love coming to Hard Knocks all the time. Friday nights, Saturday mornings, so much fun. I think one of the best parts about the gym is just how welcoming it is. It's such a welcoming environment, and everybody just works so damn hard. Like if you don't want to work hard, you stand out. And that's something that I really enjoy about going there. So as a coach there, is that something that you have instilled in your students, like this idea of like just keep working hard and be a good person? Like, do you find those to be important to have a successful gym?
For sure. For the gym that we wanted, we spent years being that like kennel full of rabid dogs that nobody wanted to go near, and it was like this isn't a business. And even that, like the fighters even suffered from that. Your coaches are stressed out because they're having trouble keeping the doors open, and then they're putting all their energy into something like fighters in a fight career that doesn't make them money. It's just a nasty cycle. That's why most gyms fail. So leaning into just being nice to people ended up paying up dividends. It's crazy. That, and hey, keep your shirt on when there's General Pop in the gym. Chill out. It's not like that.
Right.
Like little things like that matter. Changing the toilet paper. It's a thing we never do at BMTA. It's just like all these things that are like total, they're easy picks, but we
you like don't think of it,
it.
But once you do it, it's like, oh, that makes sense. Very cool.
I will say a lot of it too is trial and error. I think we went super hard in the other direction. We were just like handling people with like the softest of gloves. And not really looking at fights and fighters anymore. And then it became a passionless project. And then, you hit your wall, you hit your head against the ceiling and the floor, and you kind of figure out how to stand up straight.
Of course.
It only took 5-6 years here, and then 15 years at the last location, and then 10 years before that. It doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
But at some point, you do have to look at what you're doing and be like, this isn't working. What can we do? Or this could work better. And that's one thing we're always doing is we're figuring it out every single day.
And I mean, as a female fighter, I mean, it's so hard to find nice female fighters, I guess I should say, or welcoming female fighters. And that's exactly what the girls of Hard Knocks do, is they welcome anybody and everybody that wants to put the work in. And it's just like, you can just tell. Like, I remember when I first started, like how intimidated I was by, Liz, that girl has fought anybody that walks basically. And it was just so intimidating. And then you just get to know them and you're like, oh my God, this is great. Like, it's just such a nice atmosphere to be in.
I will say that the women of Hard Knocks have been the pillar. It really like the most consistent thing. And if I could like write a timetable in terms of success, like all roads lead back to having a strong female contingent in one way or another. Be it they're inviting more women into the gym, and sometimes those women bring their boyfriends, or they bring their girlfriends, or their kids, or their cousins, or it's something like bringing Allie in, who now runs the desk and understands that that's a major problem. Like, there's just so much more we get out of that. And I couldn't explain it to you, and I've never sat down to try to figure out, because I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth. I just want it to exist and not question it because it's just working. And it is a thing that they do on their own. I do not check in with them. I do not ask them to behave a certain way. Those women could run the gym if all the men died off, and it's fine. That's absolutely fine with me. Honestly,
I love it. And not only are you a coach and you're coaching all these females and males, but your fiance is also there as well. So that throws, sometimes it could be a wrench in the mix. It could not be, but it certainly has its own, trials and tribulations. And the girl is a beast, Jessie Lee, number 2 in the freaking world. So, and I understand, I think she told me once that she started with like a cardio kickboxing class. And like now she's number 2 in the world. Like, all right, small flex. Like what? Crazy. I was like, so how do you guys do with that dynamic with like coach versus fiance?
So we're pretty good at drawing the line. We had several years of her just being kind of there for the Gen Pop classes and doing a martial art. And I didn't have to, coaching her was a little more hands off. And we had Liz in the gym too. Sure, we've had Liz in the gym all the time. She's a brick in the wall. And that kind of was like, it allowed us to be a little more hands off or allowed me to be a little more hands off if it just, it wasn't working. Jesse's aspirations to fight didn't come out until a year or two in. She didn't even want to come to the gym first. She didn't want to be Jake's girlfriend in the gym.
Right.
And rightfully so. That's fine. And I let her do her thing. And I kept checking in with her, and she finally had enough of the place that she was at and wanted something a little more serious. And over this time, this was the first 2 years of our relationship too. I got to know a little more about her personality naturally, as you do. And she's a fiercely competitive person against herself, not other people. She's usually not looking at it. She is like, to the point where it's almost like too much. It's ruthless. So, hey, it's going to be a little more challenging for you to be in this gym. Come by, give it a try. This person, Liz, is there, and she had watched Liz fight before, having come to the gym, and was like in awe of her, as most people are. And I was like, if you don't feel comfortable with me coaching you, or it's getting a little funky, like, we can bounce stuff off of Liz and she'll help out. And sure, sugar, she did. And it helped out. It helped to mediate me and Jesse's relationship in there. But as we got to where we are now, where it's a little more intense, and her training and my attitude towards her training is a little more, what's the word?
Invested, maybe?
We're just gonna leave it at, invested in the most aggressive way possible.
I love it. I love it.
We make sure that we leave it at the door. We honestly, Maddie, we have only talked about anything that has happened in the gym between her and I twice in the years that we've been together. And those two things were fairly major, and they were around two of her biggest fights. And one of them was me just needing to check myself. And unfortunately, I wasn't doing that. And it got to the point where she had to bring it up at home. And that's when I knew it was a big deal.
Yeah.
That's when I knew. And that made me check myself with a lot of the other students too.
Right.
So pros and cons. It's good. It's a good ego check. At the same time, I've heard horror stories about relationships falling apart because of the gym.
Right.
And we just refuse to let that happen.
Yeah. I mean, Ross and I, same boat. We had to work through that thing of like, okay, I need you to be my husband right now. I don't need Coach Ross here. He can go away right now. Or I need you to yell at me right now. Okay. I totally get that. But you balance your fiance, you balance all of the other students that you have. And I just love how you train brand new beginners to super professionals, UFC type professionals. What brings you the most joy as a coach, whether it's a beginner or a professional?
Probably an early amateur fighter, like first 2-3 fights. There's no other, it's one of those things where you do forget being in it for anything for so long. You forget what it's like to have that honeymoon feeling, that Christmas feeling,
yes.
Oh my God, this is my first fight. Am I going to poop my pants in the ring? Am I just not going to make it to weight? That is so exciting. And a lot of people don't have anybody to help them through that, or because we don't really remember it. And we're all of us, even myself, sometimes we're like, you're going to be fine, kid. You're going to be fine.
Right.
Shake it off. That's not what you say. You don't say
right.
that. It doesn't, no. So I like that. It pulls me right back down to earth. And it makes me remember that even guys like Calvin and Joe feel that before they fight. And those guys are some of the more storied professionals in our entire country. It's just a matter of being present with your student. And I still very much remember that feeling of my first 2 or 3 fights. So I enjoy being almost stuck in that moment. I'm frozen in time sometimes. I enjoy it all. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy it all.
Of course.
That's what brings me the most joy.
Yeah. And when did you hook up with the Cartel, with Rob, with Calvin? How did that all come about?
So that was about 3 years ago, and it started, maybe a tiny bit longer than that. It started with Mike Rodriguez. So Mike Rodriguez, for that gym I was talking about, Bill was showing up hungover at. Mike Rodriguez lived down the street from the gym, and he used to skip school to come in and train in our morning class.
Wow.
And he was just this he's 15, 16 years old. He was a kid. He was this he was built like a frog. He was these long, big legs, this skinny torso and these long arms. And he had this big head on this little neck. He was just like so awkwardly proportioned, but holy crap, did he have like horsepower in his legs. It was the first, and I'll never forget the session. It was one of his last sessions with us before we left. He was foot jabbing me at 6 months through my belly pad, and I had bruises from his toes. I've had like 6 fights at this point. I've been kneed, full blast, no knee pad from people.
Right.
And I couldn't, we just like were almost in awe about how powerful this kid was. He couldn't tie his shoes if you helped him. But good Lord.
But the dude could fight.
Oh my God. Yeah, if he's built to do anything, it's combat sports and comedy. That kid, he's awesome.
Yeah.
He actually, so Bill used to give everybody a ride. If they were like hard workers and they were hard up kids from the city, Bill was one of those kids, especially from Dorchester. He would give them a break, clean a toilet, wash the bags. And unfortunately, when the owner of the gym caught wind of that, he didn't love it. And Mike and everyone else was asked to leave unless they're going to pay memberships, and Mike didn't have the money at the time. So we lost contact with Mike for a little bit, and we were going to do our own thing at Hard Knocks. And Mike, I kept up with Mike on Facebook. We had similar tastes in music. We actually had a couple friend circles apart from each other. So I was always kept abreast of his success. And he was with a great gym. He was with 2 great gyms, Lauzon's, and he had some love at Sitsufan, and then he'd be with Kenny Kwan at Trifecta. He's on the Contender Series, next thing you know. And I'll never forget, he got his contract, and I sent him a message. I was like, I can't wait to buy a Mike Rodriguez action figure. Like, because these guys are in video games now.
Yeah.
I was like, this is so awesome. It's like, it's just genuinely sweet kid. If you know Mike, you love him.
Yes.
He does what he can with what he's got, and he makes the best of it. And it was just elated for him. He would go on and fight Devin Clark for his first fight in the UFC. It didn't go his way. What he tells me is that he had a team meeting with Steve Mays and Joe Lauzon after that. I was like, hey, what do you need to get back to where you were when you were a dominant local? And when you got in the Contender Series, he's like, I'm going to hit up this guy. Let me see, bring him in the fold. And he hit me up and said, hey, can I buy hit pads? I was like, yeah, absolutely, come through. Don't worry about money, whatever. And we just got back to it, and it was so much fun. He had so many more weapons. I had so much more knowledge. We started to make things meld. It was a lot of fun. It was just fun. We were just having fun. We were hitting pads. I had no idea what his intentions were. He was my homie. I loved hanging out with him. He's a good Muay Thai practitioner. And then it was like, hey, you're in this camp. You're cornering. Is that cool? I was like, all right, sick.
All right.
And he was managed by Tyson Chartier, Talk Game. And so I was going to Lauzon's, and Calvin and Rob were going to Lauzon's at the same time. We were getting ready for UFC Milwaukee. Mike was fighting Adam Milstead, and Font was fighting Sergio Pettis. Sergio Pettis, great kicks, really good stand-up, Duke Rufus guy. Tyson had asked me, he's like, hey, when we go to the fights, can you help? We'll all be in the same back room warming up. Can you just throw some kicks at Rob, help warm him up on mitts? I was like, absolutely, that's cool. Having only talked to Rob once and yet to speak with Calvin. So we get to fight week, we're warming up. Calvin had just fought, I cannot remember who, I think he just beat Fish Gold. Rob's getting ready. Rob is on rope watching me hold pads from Mike. And then Calvin just comes up. He's, hey, let me get some work. I was like, all right, cool. He's like, I need help with leg kick defense. I was like, all right, word. So we're touching some stuff. And the way Rob tells it, and T tell it, they would jump and rope. And Rob was like, hold on. Put the rope down, grabbed the camera, filmed it, sent it to Cal. Like, Tyson, let's get this kid involved. And the next thing you know, they're asking, we're getting together in sessions. They are no longer at Lauzon's for the Saturday training, so we're training elsewhere. They come to Hard Knocks, I'm going to them. And we all ended up just training together. And I brought value, and I really enjoyed working with Tyson. And, it's been gravy ever since, highs and lows.
And then Joe Lauzon obviously in the mix as well.
Yeah, Joe came up to me one day. I was done holding pads to Mike. I had no inkling Joe had any intention of fighting. I came in that day, and Mays came up to me, and Mays was the boxing coach, and he's like, hey, Joe's going to talk to you today. Just saying, you can make your own choice, and walked away. And I was like, am I like getting fired? Like,
yeah, that sounds like Steve.
I'm like holding pads with a stomach ache, and Mike
yeah.
me, and I'm just like, and Joe just comes up at the end. He leans on the cage. He goes, you want to come and hold mitts for me? Like, I guess. He's like, all right, 2-3 days a week. Are you fighting? I was, yeah, I'm fighting. 2-3 days a week. You good? I was like, all right, I'll text you. And I was just like, I'm holding pads to Joe Lauzon. Fun
Oh
fact,
my
Joe
God.
Lauzon was the ref for my first smoker.
No way. That's
my
awesome.
First smoker at 19, turning 20 years old, 2021. Joe Lauzon called us into the ring. Joe doesn't know kickboxing rules. I always bust his chops for this.
Of course.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
That's incredible.
Wild.
I had no idea he did that.
Hanson. Yeah.
Oh my God, I can't wait to make fun of him for that. That's wonderful.
The DVD is out there somewhere. It's floating around. I gotta find it.
The DVD, Jake. You're on a DVD.
Yeah. Our fights are on DVDs. It took us like 2 months to get them from the producer. That's how we watched them.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. No more, no, IG Live, none of that. It was like, oh, I can't wait to get the DVD of me fighting. Oh my God, that is gold. So you are a busy man. Oh my gosh. So obviously this Saturday, you'll be helping out Joe Lauzon. You'll be helping out Calvin Kattar. Next Saturday, you're helping out my husband, Ross Levine, get that karate combat belt.
You bet.
So let's start with this Saturday. I mean, Joe Lauzon and Calvin Kattar, in my opinion, are the complete opposite fighters. Very different styles. How, where do you even begin to help them out with striking when they're just so different?
Yeah, it's definitely so different they're different in the sense that the way they apply their striking.
Right.
They are very similar in the sense that they are looking to do the most damage as quickly as possible.
Yes.
Calvin can be a sniper. He 100% can. But as we've seen his last few fights, he can also be a bulldozer. And turns out it works out really, really well. Joe is always a bulldozer. He'll never not be a bulldozer, and that's okay. So Joe's end game is just getting close enough to wrap his arms around the person. Calvin is a little bit in the opposite. He can wrestle. It's just, it's not, I think we spend more money on the outside. We usually get the finish, we get the win. So Joe, first working with Joe, his numbers are different. What I call, the numbers I call are different. They go custom auto numbers. 7 is your jab, 1 is your hook. It's a whole bunch. It's all this, that, and the other.
Interesting.
So, yeah. So, but game planning, it's like any game plan. You have to play into their strengths. With a guy like Joe, you can teach Joe, that old dog can't learn new trick is garbage. Joe is an athlete and he's a martial artist. He can learn new things. Joe will tell you if he's not going to use it. He'll straight up do it, and then he'll be like, I'm not going to use this. So, okay, fantastic.
All right, man.
First 2 weeks I worked with him, working on leg kicks. 2 weeks, leg kicks, shin pads, kicking each other, on-the-job application. It was great. At the end of the 2 weeks, he goes, okay, just so you know, I'm never going to throw a leg kick in a fight. I was like, oh, you didn't want to tell me on day 2? Now we're 14. It is what it is. But yeah, making sure that these guys are playing into their strengths. My favorite thing to do when I started working with all of these guys was I went back and I watched all of their wins and all of their interviews. I didn't grow up with these guys. I didn't cultivate them at an early age. I don't know what they can and can't do, or what they want or don't want to do outside of just the hour or two I spend with them a day. So going back, seeing what worked, and seeing if I can make that stuff happen more often and a little more efficiently. I don't think that teaching or learning or whatever striking is hard. It's not. If you are able to speak the same language, 9 times out of 10, you're going to make it work. And it can be something crazy. I'll tell you what, Joe Lauzon has a mean spinning elbow. He knows when to throw it. He snuck it in on me a handful of times. Does he want to do it? No, and I'm not going to force it. It's one of those things, just knowing how to push and pull with these guys. And it obviously changes in their opponents too. I like more when we game plan, even at any level, to not focus on what we shouldn't do, but to focus on when we should do something.
Yeah.
I hate telling fighters, don't do this. You got to tell them there's a better way to do this, and they'll figure it out. And you got to have to trust the fighters, especially these guys who have 20, 30, 40 fights. They're going to put it through the spaghetti strainer, and they're going to figure out what works best for them and when to apply it. Guys like this don't take big risks in terms of weapons. So if you're able to give them better information or help them understand why and when to throw things, they're going to do it naturally, and you have to trust their instincts, and they're going to trust them anyway. So that's the biggest thing with working with these guys.
And obviously we're riding with them to get that W this Saturday.
100%.
How do you see it playing out? Obviously, Joe likes to grapple, Calvin likes to strike, but in your honest opinion, how do you think they're going to get it done?
So Joe, I believe, has to make it happen in the first 7 minutes. Cowboy tends to pick it up in the last 7.5 minutes. So we got to make sure if we're not going to finish the fight early, we're going to do enough damage so that we can work a little safer through the second and third round. Calvin, it's tough with Emmett because he carries power, knockout power all the time, and he's a wrestler. So it's how much time on the outside do you want to spend in having to deal with that overhand and his quick footwork, and how much time on the inside do you want to spend throwing elbows and knees when he can just grab you, body lock you, put you down. And again, I'm less worried about Cerrone's left kick and Emmett's takedown offense than I am getting Joe in there safely and doing what he does best, whether he has to go through a kick or around a kick. With Calvin, there's the threat of wrestling, but we can get in there and we can throw elbows and knees all day safely. We just have to do it at the right time. I would like to say that Calvin can get the finish here, and I would like to say that Joe can get the finish here, but Cerrone is tough towards the end of the fight, and Emmett can take a shot. That dude is just a cannonball. So I would like to see these guys get early finishes, but there's a good chance that they're both going to be decision W's.
All right. I like it. I like an honest review, sir. I like that a lot. Next Saturday, the hubby doing his thing for Karate Combat. Your thoughts on Karate Combat and Ross's involvement with the organization?
I love Karate Combat. I love that it's new blood. I like the way they're doing things. The pit is funky. I don't know that I love the pit.
Yeah.
But I think the pit's going to be a thing that's going to take time to. Maybe we're going to we are getting some cool stuff off and on the pit. I mean, Ross's last finish was off the pit. It was phenomenal.
Right.
You see you guys running off of the pit, takedowns off the pit. It's pretty cool. I like that it's very calf kick centric. I like that it's a nice little, it's going to force evolution, which is cool.
Yeah.
The grappling aspect is a little funky. I don't think that everyone who's viewing it understands what they're watching. You can tell that some of the more grappling heavy competitors know what they're doing. Ross's next opponent included. I like it. I think it's a breath of fresh air. Coming from an early karate background, appreciation for all the martial arts. I think it's awesome to see it now. I feel like this would have been monstrous in the 80s or 90s, and I love that they got the guts to do it now. I love it. And having worked with Ross for so long, it's finally nice to corner with the kid. I have cornered against Ross more than I've cornered for.
I believe it. I believe it.
Those who don't know, Ross has stood across from me twice, or two of my fighters. So it's going to be very cool to finally be behind him in the moment with him. Ross is not only a tremendous individual outside of the gym, but he is the ultimate martial artist in his views towards combat sports, from the respect to line of engagement when throwing a calf kick. He and I feel, are very much on the same page.
Absolutely.
I learn a great deal from him every session too. I hope I'm teaching the kids some stuff, but I'm learning from him every time we get together for sure.
That's awesome. Well, you're certainly teaching a lot of people in New England, so kudos to you and your efforts all the time. You have a very big weekend ahead of you, so I'll let you go, but thank you for your time, and I will be rooting for Team New England this weekend. Always.
You got it.
Always.
Let's go, baby. Let's go.